So first of all, version control. So what is version control? You're all doing version control, I think, almost every day when you're working on your things, on your files. So one way to do version control is just to open a file, change something about it, and then save it under a different name. So sometimes it looks like here on the right side that you have like multiple versions of an R Markdown document, for example, and you just rename it every time you change it and you add something. So as you can imagine, and maybe you have also experienced yourself, this can become quite messy. So it can at some point become like really, I think there's a question.
Sorry, do we need to like see the presentation?
Oh yeah, you should. Yeah. Yeah, I'm also realizing you don't see it, right? Maybe it's that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, yeah, thanks for reminding me that I think I showed the wrong screen. But actually I want to show the other screen, so I would just quickly screen one, share. Okay, you're seeing it?
Yeah.
That's always the hazard with two screens, sometimes really difficult. All right, so yeah, it can look like this on the right side at some point. So you have like multiple files with different names that kind of denote the different versions of your R Markdown files. That can become quite messy. I've experienced that a lot. And maybe you've also seen that in your own folders, that at some point it just becomes a bit overwhelming and you don't really know anymore what was like this one, for example. And then, of course, there are other ways to do version control, like, for example, using applications like Dropbox or Google Docs or Overleaf. And you can also do version control with Git and GitHub, and that's what we will be getting into today. And that's kind of preventing like having this mess over here, and it's also coming along with with many other benefits that I will talk about today. But yeah, this is basically version control. Okay, now version control with Git and GitHub. So the advantages of using Git and GitHub, and I will talk about what that is in an instance, is that you can contribute to open source projects. I've also posted an example of an open source project. I mean, there are millions, so it's difficult to keep track, but yeah, it's really easy. It makes it really easy to contribute also to those projects. And almost all open source projects use GitHub. So if you really want to get into contributing to open source projects, then GitHub is kind of a must. So there are also other tools and other online repository services that you could use, but GitHub is really the major one. And you find almost everything there. So yeah, using GitHub is quite an advantage. Of course, you can showcase your work through Git and GitHub. So we'll have kind of a website or a link. You can also share with other people to kind of show what you've been working on, to invite them to collaborate, or to really, I don't know, also get your research out there and your analyses and your outputs. So that's really a way to do that. And I think we as scientists, I think we definitely have an interest in also sharing our work, maybe not only through journals, but maybe also through things like, yeah, for example, GitHub or GitHub pages. So I think that's definitely something that's made quite easy if you're able to use Git and GitHub. Then, of course, you're able to track your changes across the different versions. So you're kind of avoiding this mess I just showed on the other slide. And one big thing is you can collaborate on projects together. And if once you like master Git and GitHub, this part here becomes quite major. So this part becomes quite a big thing, and also a big advantage of using Git and GitHub. So it makes the collaboration part really easy. So you don't have to share things via email anymore. You don't have to upload it anywhere on Dropbox and then people download it, change it. And then in between you also changed it and something's totally messy. So all that is kind of prevented if you're able to use Git and GitHub with that. And then, of course, you have various integration options. So you can use Amazon Google Cloud with Git and GitHub. You can use GitHub Pages to showcase your stuff. So to kind of create your own websites, you can host them on Netlify. It's all made very, all made pretty easy via GitHub. I think there may be also other advantages. Again, maybe you can name some after the workshop, but those are the ones that I could name from the top of my head.
Sorry?
Yes? Yeah?
To collaborate using GitHub, that would mean that all of the collaborators also need to be familiar with GitHub and use it like
Indeed. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see that as a challenge as well.
It is a challenge, definitely. I mean, especially in our field, it is a challenge, but I already know some of my colleagues who also use Git and GitHub, so people are becoming more and more familiar with that, and maybe it's also an invitation to kind of start using that, but I definitely see the challenge there. Yeah, for sure.
Right, but would you say that there are also advantages to using Git and GitHub only for yourself, even if your collaborators are not? Or what are the advantages of that over just using, I don't know, the cloud, like version history?
Yeah, definitely all the rest, like all the other points. So you can still contribute to open source projects, you can still showcase your work, you can track your own changes really easily, get back to older versions pretty easily, and you can integrate your stuff with pages and showcase your work on websites or using Amazon or Google Cloud. So I think only that part then goes away, but I think all the other benefits are still there. So I mainly use GitHub for myself. I mean, I also collaborate on projects, but that's really a minor part right now. So I still find it quite useful just for my own stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And of course, like once we all know Git and GitHub, I think this collaboration part could also become bigger. So maybe it's some sort of a mission at some point to also invite other people using it, so you can also benefit from that a lot. But even if you don't collaborate using Git and GitHub, you still get many, many advantages by using it. Okay, so Git is mainly, or it's just a software that keeps track of your versions on your local computer. So it's local to you, which means nobody else sees that. So it's not like GitHub, something that is online, but it's on your local machine. It's on your local computer. It's just some sort of a tool that allows to track the changes you're making to your files. I think it will all become a bit clearer once we talk about how you actually use it. But this is kind of what Git is. And then GitHub is a hosting service. And that is remote to you. So it's like a Dropbox. It's somewhere online. And you can add your changes, like your files and stuff, using Git. Git keeps track of your changes. And then using Git, you can push those changes to GitHub. So you can send those changes to GitHub. And then GitHub uploads those changes on the GitHub page. So that is kind of how the two work together. Then I think I already talked a little bit about repositories or repos yesterday. So a repository is nothing else but a set of files whose records are kept together by Git or GitHub. So you have imagine you have a folder on your computer, and once you initialize Git on it, then it becomes a repository. So it's really nothing else than that. And then there's also remote repositories, and that's the one you see on GitHub. So that's a remote repository because it's somewhere online. It's not on your local computer anymore. Or it's also there, but also online. So this is a remote repository. Then to commit, those terms are kind of the basic terms you need to know when you're using Git and GitHub for version control. So to commit means to take some sort of a snapshot of your local repository. So you have the changes still on your local machine, and you're just kind of taking a snapshot of them. So telling your Git system, hey, this is what I changed, this is what I want to maybe add somewhere, please keep track of that. And then to push is always the final part. So that is where you send your records from Git to GitHub. So you get from your local computer to an online server. So so first you add the changes, so you make some changes, add them, then you commit them, take the snapshot, and then you send them to GitHub. That's kind of the workflow. So it's a little bit like uploading files on a website. Now the website is GitHub. Yeah, maybe this also makes it a bit clearer. It also becomes quite clear once you use it. But basically the idea is that you have your local computer and you have some changes on your local computer, like some files that you worked on. And then you save those changes. And then you're adding the commits. So you're saying, hey, I want to take a snapshot of those files and changes. That's still on your local machine, so Git keeps track of those changes. And then you say, hey, now I want to push them on the remote repository, and that's stored online. So that's a GitHub GitHub service which hosts Git online. So that is kind of how you get from your local machine to the remote repository on GitHub. This is kind of the steps that you're taking on the journey there. Does that make a little bit sense to you? Yep, cool. All right, then another little Mentimeter, because it's actually, like for me, it would be nice to know how familiar you are with using the terminal. So the terminal is this. And you all have it on your computer. So on the Windows, it looks different. It's called Bash, but you still have it. And yeah, I just wanted to ask you how familiar you are with using it. So do you use it a lot? Have you never used it? So please just go to the link, like open the link, and yeah, I will check out the results in an instant. And there was a question, I think. Oh no, someone wants to get in. Okay.
For me, it says the voting is closed.
Ah, okay. Maybe the... Let me just check. Have you also tried with the code? So if you just go to menti.com, so leave out the last part here and just enter the code, maybe that works.
It says please wait for ask the presenter to open voting.
Interesting.
Because it doesn't ask for the code this time.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, yeah. Share the link. I think it should now work. Can you try again, clicking the link?
Doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
Me neither.
me neither.
Well, then I will just ask you. So who has never used the command line? So is there someone who has like never really used it? Okay, 5 people have raised their hands. And someone who uses it regularly? Okay, so it's more like, so I get the impression it's more like something you're not using a lot. So it's a bit unfortunate that we can't really see the Mentimeter, but all right. So I think I will just get into the basics of it then. It's actually not that tricky to use it, and it makes like this version control via Git and GitHub much easier than doing that. There is actually also an option to do that just using RStudio. So if you feel like very uncomfortable using the terminal, the command line, I just invite you to try it out. So maybe just open it and try out some things. Just, I don't know, navigate to folders, look up some commands. It's actually can become also a bit like fun using it and mastering it a bit. But if you really feel uncomfortable using it, there is an alternative, and I've linked a video in the slides where you can see how to do the version control part only using RStudio. So it's all in RStudio, especially it's only the first part of the video that is relevant for today. But yeah, if you want to avoid using the terminal, that's definitely also an option. But yeah, in general, I would say don't be afraid of the terminal. It's really I don't know, it's really just a tool that makes things easier, and it's really useful for any kind of software you're using. So even if you're like not using R but other analysis software, then still the terminal becomes relevant. So yeah, it's not R specific, and that is a nice thing, I think, to know how to use it because it's quite powerful. So
Sorry, can I ask a question?
yes, of course.
So I'm at a Windows computer, and if I look for bash, I only get offered the Git bash, right? Because I installed Git.
Yeah.
And RTools bash, but I don't even see anything else. So to be honest, I wouldn't even know how to get to it.
Yeah.
I have
On a
Windows.
Windows.
That's it with searching for terminal.
Terminal, yeah. If you type terminal, then you should. Can you try that? So bash is actually
Okay.
it's for Git only, and if you're just using the terminal, I think you can just open the terminal and then you can also use bash within the terminal. Sorry, I'm really not that familiar with those terms for Windows, but I think it's also called terminal, right?
On the Windows, it's a command prompt. So it
Yeah,
says
I
like,
it as well.
yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Maybe it would also be nice to, so if people really struggle with using that in Windows, is there someone in the room who uses that on a Windows?
I do sometimes.
Okay, cool. Just have to know who does sometimes. Can you say it again?
Oh, sorry.
Tiffany, okay.
Here.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I just didn't see you, so I didn't know. All right, so maybe it would also be an option to get together maybe in one room and figure out stuff in Windows, how to do that on Windows. Maybe all those people using a Windows engine could just add a comment to the room now. So just comment with your name so I know kind of who's using a Windows. Maybe that makes sense to put you in one room together so you can figure out stuff together, and I can also then visit that room with this in mind that you're using Windows, because it looks a bit different. It might be a bit confusing, so I think that makes sense. So just add your name in the comment field so I know who's using a Windows. And all the rest, if you're using either a Linux or a Mac, that doesn't really matter. That should be fine. And Windows is also fine. It's just it just looks a bit different, I think. All right. So the first thing I would like you to do now already is just open your terminal, command prompt, whatever, and type in this Git version.
And can I quickly ask something?
Definitely.
The second part with git config la la la.
Yeah.
Is that supposed to give our GitHub name, username?
Yeah, so you mean this part here?
Yeah.
No, you would just type this exactly like this, global user.name.
Okay. Thank you. Because I thought it would have to show my actual username from GitHub.
It will show that. So once you type that, in here, if the setup worked, so if your Git setup worked, this should appear. I mean, not Anne-Katrin Kleine should appear, but your name should appear, and also the version of Git you're using.
That's interesting, because I do have the version appeared, but not my username. So I guess they're just not connected.
Okay, so what happens if you type in the second one?
Nothing. It's a new line, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it stays empty.
For me to see.
And did it work for anyone? So getting your username?
It worked for me.
It worked for you, okay. So actually, I think...
But I'm on a MacBook, so yeah, I don't know if that makes any difference.
It shouldn't really...
I have Windows that didn't work for me, but it doesn't even do the, it says command not found.
For the Git version?
Yes.
Okay, I will just... I think really getting Git to work on your machine is kind of the major part. So once this works, and your Git is working, everything else is becoming quite easy, but this is definitely the difficult part. And I think, so there are some installation guides on the website, but actually if this doesn't work for you, then we definitely have to do that still. So then we definitely have to set up Git for you guys. So maybe the first session or the first breakout thing will rather be to install Git. So we will just figure that out and make that work for you, because you definitely need it. To use Git, you need Git. So that is just, yeah, we can't really get around that. Okay, so for some people it didn't work in the Git bash, but in the command prompt. All right, let's take the first breakout room just to figure that out and make it work for everyone. So, yeah, I think we will figure it out. Once this is kind of okay working, or even if it isn't, so even if you can't use Git today, as I told you, there are those options to actually use the Git commands through kind of through RStudio. So we could also just do that for today. But I just want to show you like how it would look like if you're using the command line. It's kind of the same on RStudio. Like it looks a bit different, but the general workflow is the same. So it doesn't really. So I will show it today with the terminal, but it's actually the same stuff on RStudio. So what you would always do first if you're doing version control with Git and GitHub is to actually create a new repository on GitHub. So I think all of you have created a GitHub account. So that was in the setup. So you would just go to GitHub and then sign in. I get a verification code. That doesn't always happen, but sometimes you have to verify your identity again if there's something, if it thinks it needs a verification. I'm not really sure when that actually happens. All right, and then now I'm on my own GitHub. So what I could do now is just to add a new repository here, and I would just go ahead and do that. So that's really always the first part. So you would kind of open GitHub and add a new repository, because that is kind of where you host your stuff online then once you make your changes to your files. It should also have like an informative name, so that will really be your project name. So think about your projects that you want to push to GitHub, like one project, and then give it a name. It can also be the same name as your project name on R, but it doesn't have to be. So let's call this workshop D2. You can add a description, but it's optional. And then for public and private, so if you make it private, that's fine. Then only you can really use it and work with it. But you can also then not use, for example, GitHub Pages with it or upload it on Netlify, so make a website out of it. So there are some disadvantages of private repositories, but it's possible. So if you really just want to keep track of your changes, you just want to work with yourself and not show the stuff to anyone, keeping it private is quite all right. I usually just keep it public because you can also, as I already told you yesterday, and we will talk more about that today, exclude certain files that you don't want other people to see from the push. So you can add them to the git ignore, and then other people don't see them. So you can hide whatever you want from the public and still have a public repository. So I would just create a public one. You can add a README, but it actually don't have to. So everyone is always saying you have to, but yeah, I can also just ignore that and add it later. So you should definitely have a README at some point, but you don't have to have it now. And then you're seeing this page over here. And that's actually already it. So if you're now working from RStudio, all you need is this. So that's it. That's the entire setup. And then on RStudio, you would connect Git to this repository. So it's all described in the video. You would connect Git to the repository and then kind of upload your R files to that repository. But doing it through the command line, and I hope we will all figure out how to do that today and make it work for you, it would now go the following way. So you have the repository, you have filled in some information. Oops. You have that site here appearing, and then in your terminal you would navigate to your project folder, so where you actually want to have that project. So this is now if you don't already have a project that you want to push. So this is for an entirely new project, so you don't have anything there yet, and you would just initialize it first on GitHub, so create the repository, and then add the files later on. So you can also, if you already have a local repository, so have a file that you just want to connect to GitHub, that is just almost the same workflow. Actually, the correct one. So I would now navigate to where I actually want to be. Well, let's just do it like that because you already created an example project yesterday. So maybe let's just really do it like this and add the already existing project to your GitHub, because maybe that's more realistic since we already created a project yesterday. Maybe you just want to connect that to GitHub today and not create an entirely new one. So let's do it like that. So now I'm in the correct folder. I would go to the example.
Sorry, I'm getting a bit lost with all of these. Like, I can't type as fast as you can type, and it's not working. Like when I type the same thing. So can we like take it step by step?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you're opening. So are you in your terminal?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to follow along, the only thing I have done so far is to navigate to my folder. Is to navigate to where I actually want to have the file.
Yeah, but when I made the repository, how do I know where it is?
You haven't made it on your local machine yet. You don't have it on your computer.
Okay.
All you've done right now is so this is all online. This is not on your machine. So I've just opened GitHub. This is online. It's all online. And then I create a new repository. Here, and that is still all online, so it's not yet connected. So the goal is to connect this online stuff to what is on your local computer. That is kind of the end goal, but you
okay.
haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
It's not something that is there, so you don't find any of that stuff that I just created here on my computer, not yet. If you want to follow along, maybe I just do it again a bit slower. So you open GitHub. You're on your landing page if you've logged in. So if you want to follow along, you can definitely do that. And then click the plus. Create a new repository. I have to then select an owner, but I think you don't have to. Enter a name. Enter description if you want to. Keep it public for now. Yeah, we will talk later about whether it could be public or not, but keep it public for now and then create the repository. So I've already done that here, and then this page should appear for you. Should look the same. And then once you have that, now what you would do, because now the goal would be to connect something that is already there. So we have worked yesterday on this example project a little bit. And now my goal is to link that example project that already exists on my computer. So I can see it here on my R. If I go to my files, I know it's in the workshop. No, it's actually not. It's in the test folder. In the example project, and here it is. So this is what I now have on my local machine, on my local computer, and the goal is to have all this on my GitHub. So that is kind of what we want to achieve. And that is, again, so you can also go the other way. So you can also first create the repository, have nothing here, and create something on the go. So once you have the repository, then add files to it. But now we already have stuff here, and we just want to connect it to GitHub. So that's what we will try. And you navigate to your, so to see where you are, you would type pwd, and that is showing you where you're sitting right now in your terminal. So right now I'm in users, Anna, reporting test folder. So if I look here, users, Anna, reporting test folder. There's a question?
How are you supposed to change the working directory if it's not, if it's not the one that you want to be?
Okay, so if you're in the wrong folder, yeah, we will do that now. So now I'm here. So I should see if I type in tree, and tree should also work for you. If it doesn't, you can type ls, and ls, actually I'm not sure if ls is a command that the Windows terminal knows, but maybe then try l or la, but something of that kind should show you the files. If it doesn't work, it's really easy to Google, like what's the command on Windows, ls command on Windows. But anyway, then you should see the files that are in that folder. And that's exactly what I see over here. So now I'm in that folder and I see those files over here. And the tree is just a fancy way of showing all that stuff. It's actually really messy, but okay, let's keep with the ls. There's also, oops, no. Okay, now I'm already into the navigation part. So Tina, I think the question came from you. So how do I get to the folder where I actually want to be? You navigate to your folders using the CD command and the CD 2 points. So it's similar to what we did yesterday when we were talking about relative path. So the 2 points always mean I jump one directory up. So I go one directory back. So if I type CD 2 dots, I go one directory earlier than the reporting directory, which would in this case be my root directory. And then to go into the reporting directory again, I would just type CD reporting and then the slash because it's a folder, and then it jumps into the reporting directory. So again, I'm in that one. And now to navigate to the test folder, I would again type CD test folder and jump into the test folder. Now I'm in the test folder, and so on. And if you really get lost, something that you can always do is CD and then this tilde, because that will always bring you back to your basic repository, like to your basic folder, which is the root folder. So it's always like the earliest folder where you can actually get. I think there are 2 questions.
Yeah, so for me, the CD function is not working.
Okay.
So I'm using Windows, but I cannot find the folder.
Yeah. CD on Windows. Actually, CD also works on Windows.
In my case, I use most easier strategy is just CD and the quotation marks and the path in between. So I can copy paste in the chat.
You mean the
I don't have to navigate in the directories. Yeah.
Actually, there is, Tiffany, you told me that you have some experience using the terminal on Windows. Could you maybe just share your screen and just show it real quick, like how you would navigate to a file?
The easiest thing is like that you can navigate it manually. Like if you don't understand the command line at all, you can go to the folder.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, and then where it says basically the path, you just click on it, write CMD, press enter, and it will already open this location in your command line.
So something like you would just, what I sometimes do also is
that.
To drag that over.
I don't know how it works in Mac, but I never tried it for dragging over. So wait, I can share my screen if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really happy there's also a Windows user. I'm very sorry, I don't know all the commands on Windows.
Okay.
Also, much of the stuff is similar, but some things are just a bit different.
The entire screen. Sure. Okay. Wait. I don't know which one I'm sharing right now, but one or two. Okay, let's try one. The other one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So basically, yeah, just for instructions. Yeah. Oh, okay. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. Yeah. So basically here, what you have, I will just use the C disk, or maybe we can also go like to whichever folder you want. And then just write CMD, press enter, and it should open. Yeah, and basically you see that it's already in the file that, I mean, yeah, it has the path that you want to have.
Yeah.
So you can also try it like that, instead of like writing it by yourself. That's the easiest way. So you can try it like that.
Yeah, thank you. Nice, this works a bit.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Thanks.
All right. Actually, I found a page where it's described a little bit for Windows. So what happens if you try, just share my screen again. Because it is, I mean, it's just a little bit different words, I think, on Windows, but it's actually the same idea. So it's not really, it shouldn't be that difficult. If you try CD and then this backslash, and then some folder name, so this won't work for me, but maybe you can also try that. So there's like many tutorials also how to use the bash or command line for Windows. The idea is really the same. And I also see now here, so to navigate to a folder, you would go type CD, the two dots. So maybe it's without the, so I type CD like this. Maybe it's for you like this. So that is maybe the difference for Windows users, but actually it shouldn't be that different. So maybe try this. If you type CD and then this, like go to your folder, go to another folder, and then type CD like that. It shouldn't be that difficult to find out how to actually use it on Windows. And I think once you understand how to use it in general, even on a Mac, I think it's not really that hard anymore because it's only commands. If it's now that or this, well, okay, you will figure it out. But I think it's more important to know the entire idea of using the command line and what it means and how you, like, that you can navigate to different folders and open them. And then finding out about the different commands, that's really something I think you can figure out. All right. Yeah, I hope this is not keeping you from trying that stuff, because it shouldn't. It's just like commands you will get at some point, and it's really, yeah, you will really get the hang of it by using it a bit more. But okay, we left off here. So let's say we want to now navigate to the test folder again. So I would type CD test folder. Clear just means to clear my screen and to just show where I am right now. ls again is to list the different files. And then what I want to do now is to have the example project on GitHub. So the example project is the one that we were working on yesterday, or actually let's go into project 2 and see what's in there. Project 2 is already linked to a GitHub repository, and example project I think also is. Let's do something else. Let's make a new directory. You would do that with mkdir. Workshop day 2, D2. Okay, and now we're in the in the new directory that I just created here, and it's currently empty. So what I want to do now is link that repository to my online stuff, because so when I go back to the example project, so the one I actually wanted to add, I see here that it already says Git master, and this is always an indication that this is already linked to some certain Git repository, GitHub repository. Never ever, if you see Git somewhere before a folder, before a repository, so if you open it and it shows Git, never ever initialize a new repository there, because it will just mess up with your files. It will be a bit difficult to actually keep track of that. So this is already linked to an online repository, and indeed it is linked to my, of course it's linked to my repository I already have here. So I already have an example project repository here. So this one here is already linked to that one here. So I wouldn't really initialize a new one now, because it doesn't make sense. I already have it here. So what I want to do now is use another one. And that's why I now created this workshop D2. Because that's not linked to anything. So if I open the folder, there's no Git, no whatever. And that's cool. That's good. So that's how it should be if you want to link it to a new repository that you just created. It's a bit unfortunate that this is now empty, but let's not keep it empty. Let's just add something there. But first of all, before I now add something, I would initialize. So I just follow the instructions over here. So I would initialize the Git repository. This just tells me that it's now jumping to a certain branch, which is called master. You don't have to understand now what is master and branching and whatever. It will become a bit clearer on the go, but this is now telling me that that now it's linked to Git. It's now initialized an empty Git repository in this folder, so it's now linked with Git. So Git now can take the commits, it can now push and whatever. So I've now told this repository, hey, link this with Git. So keep track of my changes here. Yeah, there's a question.
Yeah, so I have the same, I'm also on a Mac, and I have the same kind of layout, except for that last line. So when I do a command, I don't see actually that Git master last line, which I think is helpful, but I don't have it. And I also installed iTerm2 because I thought I'll get this nicer layout than the normal terminal, but yeah, it's not working. So did you do anything to kind of
Yeah, I did. And it's beyond the scope of the workshop today to actually change the layout of your terminal, but there are many tutorials how to do that, so you can definitely change the layout here. But do you see anything, like any prompt that's telling you that something is linked or there's something? So if you initialize the Git repository,
yeah, I have everything above, like everything that you have, like all of the hints and initialize empty Git repository.
Okay,
blah, blah,
perfect.
blah.
Yeah.
But I just don't have the last one.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. It's just a layout thing. It's not really necessary to have that.
Yeah, but it's useful.
It's useful. I can
if you send any hints.
Definitely. I will note that down, and I will actually send you a link or send you resources how to change that to get this this layout.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also think it's helpful, and I like this layout, and I also like iTerms too. But I mean, this also works in a very normal terminal, but definitely it's helpful if you have more hints in the terminal. And I like that also, but it's not necessary. So if you see this stuff here, fantastic. That would be really great. So now what we do is, so it's empty, right? So we don't have anything in that repository. That's a bit unfortunate. So what we do now is we just create a random file. So just to make this look not empty, and also in your case, if you imagine you have your R projects that you worked on yesterday and you now want to link those to the GitHub repository, this is what I'm mimicking here. So I'm kind of adding stuff now to this folder. to kind of pretend there's something in there, so to have kind of the same setup that you also have on your computer, because you actually have something in there, right? You have your R stuff in there. So you're now in the folder where your project from yesterday sits. I don't have anything in there, so I just create some random stuff. So touch means to create a new file, and I just create a README. So now I see I have a new file in here, a README, which is not really informative because there's nothing in the README, but I have something in my folder now, so it's not empty anymore. And you can also verify by looking into so just using the normal way, kind of. So there's workshop D2, and I have this empty README here. So that's the one I just created in the terminal. Alrighty, so now we are all set up. We have like the folder, and there's something in there, an empty README. So what we do now is we want to add the README, and we do that by typing git add. So that's always telling Git, hey, I actually am ready to start a commit. So I'm ready to add something to the commit. I actually did something, and now I want to add that stuff that I did. Yeah, there's a hand.
Yes, I have a question. After you initialize this Git thing, it still doesn't show Git ..master.
Yeah. I think that was also the question that was answered previously. It will look differently on your machine because you don't have the same terminal setup. But it's not. That's not really. I mean, it doesn't really matter for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was still focusing on connecting this thing.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's a bit confusing. Actually, what we could also do. Oops, why is it not opening? Yeah, no. So it's still kind of the similar layout. I'm always using items, so I thought maybe this looks different on the normal terminal, but it doesn't. Okay, so it will look a bit different on your machine, but don't worry about that. So if you don't see the Git master, but you see all the hints and you see that Git was initialized, that's totally fine. And again, I will send some resources on how to change the layout and how to actually add those nice and useful hints over here after the workshop. So you will get some hints on how to change the looks of your terminal, of your items, whatever. And I will also search for something on Windows, like how to do that. It's definitely possible and also useful. So now we are on the git add part. So now I want to add something that is in the folder. And right now I could just add the README because there's only the README in there. Something else I often do if I don't have like very big files, because that can sometimes be a bit messy, but I would just do it like that. So I just add everything. This dot always means that I add everything that's in there, every change, every file, every folder, everything that's in the workshop D2, I just add it. So right now, that means I just add the README, right? Because it's the only thing that's in there. But sometimes it's more, and then not to miss anything, you can just add the dot. So I usually work with a dot. I just like that a lot because you don't really have to think about what you changed or what you want to add. If you don't want to add something specific only, then the dot always works. So now we are at the commit stage. So what we do now is we write our first commit. And you write it like this. So it's always the same. It's always the same what you type. You type git command commit -m. The M stands for message, and you actually always have to include a message. And that is very, very useful because for keeping track of your changes, you can also roll back. So at some point, if you want to like get back to an older version of your files and you actually want to use that version control thing, you can type git log. And then you see all the messages that you added for your different commits and get back to an earlier stage of your file, similar to Dropbox, but more convenient, I think, because you actually see like a list of things that you did. And then you can say, hey, get back to this stage. Get back to that commit message. Get back to this, what I did at that point. I think it also becomes clear by practice, but this is actually very useful to have like an informative commit message. So right now we just added the README. Add README. That is more informative than initial commit because you actually have a README there. So why not say I added a README? So this is telling me, all right, there is something that changed. So one file changed. That's probably the README. And it's in the creation mode. So yeah, this is great. So this is what you want to see. And now, since you don't really, so still there's no link between this and the remote repository. You're creating that link in the next step. So now you're adding the remote repository on GitHub to your Git. So you're linking Git to GitHub. And this is the step that you do here. So now this Git thing over here that I've initialized here knows, please link it to my workshop D2 remote repository. And now the very last step is to push it all. And this just means that you push your changes, push your files to the origin master, which is a bit weird language, but it just means that you're pushing it to the master branch, which you're on. You're usually always on the master branch, and it also tells you that something about the branch over here. So it will tell you on which branch you are. And you can also change the branch, and we will talk about branching later. But right now you're still in the master branch. Yeah, there's a question and another one. So maybe first question first.
I don't know who was first, actually, but yeah, I can start.
Just go. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I get an error that my repository is unsafe and owned by someone else.
Ooh, okay, interesting.
So it says fatal unsafe repository, and then maybe because I'm on my Solus.com UU, like that it's a drive. Maybe is the problem, or.
Can you maybe share your screen so maybe someone else also has that problem? Just figure it out real quick.
Yeah, I can do that. Can you see this?
Yes.
So here, fatal unsafe repository.
Okay, are you on a work computer or something?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the folder you're actually trying to add is not on something only you have access to. Is that possible? So if you have a folder that also is linked, yeah. So you of course need the admin rights to that folder.
So then maybe I could change the folder? Is that?
Try that, yeah.
Right,
So
okay.
I'm not sure about the setup of your company, like or of your university, like how that is, how they keep track of your folders and how that is controlled. But you could try to use another folder.
Yeah.
So usually there is one drive that's only owned by you, I think. So if you maybe navigate to that and create a folder there and then put it there, maybe that works.
Yeah, I can try that.
Yeah, maybe try that out. If not, we definitely have the time to also solve issues like that later on.
Yeah, I will try that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you already figured that some stuff can be a bit tricky at the beginning. But yeah, don't be frustrated or don't let this kind of I don't know, keep you from using Git and GitHub. It's just really something you get the hang of quite quickly, I think. So the learning curve is really, really steep. And at some point, once you get kind of the idea about what this actually means and how you can use it, it becomes really easy. And also once you solve those smaller issues, I mean, they happen. They happen to me as well. It's just something I Google and then find out at some point, and then I'm happy I found it out, and then it's great. So it's just, yeah, don't be frustrated. It's a learning thing. It will work for you, definitely. This is made to work. It's not made to fail. So yeah, let's just keep working on this one here. So now, as I said, I'm in this final step of pushing. So now I've done everything. I've added, I've committed, I've added the remote repository. And this part here is the part I only have to do once. Because once I've added the remote repository, it's linked forever to my Git repository. Unless you remove the link. You can also remove the link, but if you don't do that, it will always be linked. As the example project I showed you earlier, that was always linked with my here with this one here. So you see that here's already a Git repository, and that's because I didn't remove that link. So it's still linked to the remote repository example project. So now I do the push. And well, it worked. So the push is done. Let's just check it out. Okay, so that's it. Now I have the remote repository over here. So I'm on my GitHub, on my online repository, and I can see that 5 minutes ago I made the commit. So this is always showing the time of the commit, I think. And the README is here, and everything is linked to my online repository. So whatever I had in that folder is now linked to the online repository. And that is actually already it. So yeah, once this works, the rest, so that's really it. So there's really nothing more to kind of do or understand. So now if I go to my repositories, I have the workshop D2 here, and I have that linked to my computer. So that's just describing the steps over here. So if you got lost at some point, you can also just go back to the slides and just follow along with this one here. And that should actually work. So yeah, now you have the pushed files on your GitHub repository. Yeah, there's a question.
Yeah, so I'm getting an error that says when I do the git remote add and then the path, it says remote origin already exists.
Ah, so have you maybe already linked that to your repository at some point? So have you already added?
The thing is, I don't see it in my, like when I go to the browser and the GitHub,
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Okay, if you are in your folder right now, type git status. What happens then?
I mean, I'm in Git, like in the GitHub in the browser, and I don't see it.
Okay, maybe share your screen.
Sorry?
Maybe share your screen so I can understand what you are doing.
Let me just see what screen. This one. So, yeah. So here, it should be here, right?
Yeah,
But
but
it only says that I made it, but there is no Git. There is no README. It actually is telling me to add a README.
can you go to your terminal? Oops, sorry. Can you go to your terminal?
Oh, yeah.
And
So I tried a few times, and yeah.
yeah, that's no. Yeah, I think I. Okay, you did the touch readme.md. It's there. Git add, git commit, git remote add, git push. Okay, can you type git push? No, can you type git status first? ls. Okay, let's just do it again. Git add dot.
Dot.
Yeah. Git commit minus m.
Just like this?
Yeah, just like that, and then minus m. Oh no, sorry, that minus m. So the normal, so the one you've also done before. We just go through it again, and then a message. Okay, and now git push minus u origin
Fatal.
Yeah, 1 second maybe. Or now type git. Git remote. No, yeah, remote. Sorry, remote minus v.
That's
yeah,
it?
just that. 1 second.
Should I start over from?
No. I think you're actually fine. I think you're on the main branch and not the master branch, but I'm actually not sure. Can you try git push u minus u? Sorry, minus u. Origin main.
What?
Nope. Okay, now type git branch. Just that. Okay, actually on the master branch.
I could just start over.
What is a bit weird is that you have your repository and you also have this .git attributes in there. So you have pushed something, right? I mean, you have. I don't know what this.
I don't know.
How did you get there? Like, how did you get to the workshop too? Like to that page? Because
I logged in.
Yeah.
Maybe because I also was playing around and I installed a GitHub desktop.
Yeah.
And at first I made a repository there, and then you said, well, go to the github.com, and then I went there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe start over. Maybe try something like creating a new repository and really just initializing that from scratch, because it really seems like you have that linked somehow to something. And you can also, so it's easy to remove a git from your terminal. So if you're in the terminal, I think it's just git rm -r or something. 1 second. Remove remote repository.
Git what?
Yeah, maybe type git remote rm master. Yeah, that didn't really work. Okay, let's figure that out in. Sorry, but I think it's definitely solvable. But I think you would need to delete your what this repository is connected to, and then just initialize a new one with a new clean new repository on your GitHub. So on your remote GitHub. But it's easy to do. So I think we can just figure it out. We have some stuff to figure out in the next break, but it will definitely make that work. Yeah, Tina?
I have a completely unrelated question.
Yeah.
Because I tried to push this folder into GitHub, and then I had to put my password in, apparently.
Okay, yeah.
And that didn't work because they wanted a token.
Yeah.
Or like an API key. And then I went and did all of that for the API key, and then went into the Apple keychain, whatever that thing is called. But I couldn't find GitHub there. And I'm trying to find maybe like a forum that could help, but nothing helped so far. So I was wondering if maybe you know how to deal with it.
Okay. That's a common thing. So I think you haven't linked this, so you haven't authenticated or created this token probably. So I think that's also part of the setup, but that can happen that you then enter your passphrase and it still wants the token. Okay, so we have now the adding a token. I think it's the SSH token. There's definitely some resources on how to add that. It's also not really...
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm looking into that right now, but I cannot really find GitHub in my keychain access. And
yeah, I think it's not from the keychain. Can you paste your error message maybe in the chat, or like what doesn't work?
Just a second.
Okay, there's the token issue. Then we have the Git issue. So for some people,
This. And yeah, I don't really get it.
mm-hmm.
So then
Okay.
I went and created this token on GitHub, but I don't know where to put it into my computer so that it creates the link.
Yeah, we can deal with that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have the token. Then we have the remote repository that needs to be deleted. Who was that again? I think that was the one. So I just add the name so I can then visit people in their rooms and we will figure that stuff out. So who had the issue with the with this remote repository that is already linked and the push doesn't work?
Me.
Okay, Bojana. All right, and we can create or collect more issues on the go. So we will definitely try things out today and try to figure this stuff out. So just one thing I wanted to mention briefly, we won't get into that a lot, but it's also not that much to understand. So there is this git ignore file I talked about a lot already. So that is kind of, you can add that to your main directory in your project. It's usually added if you already use a template or if you use cookie cutter, it's already there. And what this git ignore does is it collects all the, so you can add names in the git ignore, names of stuff you want to exclude from the push. So for example, if I go into into a repository, into a folder that makes more sense, so the example project folder, for example, I would now need to type LA because that's listing everything, and the git ignore is always like a hidden file. Hidden files are all the files with the dot in front. They are hidden.
Oh, sorry. Can you share your screen again?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, please say if I'm not sharing. Yeah, so I hope you see it now. So let's just go back so you can all see it. So I was in the other folder. Now I navigated back to the example project folder, so to the one where I have actually all my stuff. And that's the one we also have been working on yesterday, and that's the one, if you use the template example from yesterday, this is the template example. And to list all the files in that, I would type LA, so to also list the hidden files. Hidden files are those with the dot. And I now also see the .git ignore. So I can just open the code, is just my editor. So you can also, if you're using Atom or another editor, you can type that name, or you just, I think you can even just type open. Always you can type open. And it just opens in like some editor. I don't know, it doesn't really matter in this case. And here you see all the stuff that I will exclude from the push. And you also see that, for example, I exclude everything that's in the analysis folder that ends with HTML, docs, or PDF. So I exclude all the generated files there because I don't want to have them on GitHub. And I could, for example, now add something like if I want to exclude the data folder because there's sensitive data in that folder. Do I have a data folder? Yes, I have a data folder. So I would go in there and see whether there's actually something in there. Yes, there is something in there. So maybe I just want to exclude the entire data folder. because I have sensitive data and I don't want other people to see that. And since I'm having like a public repository, it's not really nice if people see what I have, what data is in there, if it's not anonymous. So what I would do is just type data. No, that's that. It's maybe the disadvantage of using this editor. So now this would just exclude the data folder from being pushed. And that so now you need to save that, of course, and that just means that if I now do the git add, it's already telling me that now this will be ignored from the next steps. Okay. Okay, so this is kind of telling me that actually there are changes that I added online. So maybe I added the README or did something online on that repository, and I have not, I don't have that change it on my local computer. Then I would just do git pull and kind of get those changes to my local computer. We will get into the git pull today, so this is not something we need to bother about now. I'll just do that again. Okay, it still doesn't work. Pull. All right, yeah, so again, you get the hang of that quite quickly. Imagine you want to collaborate in a team of data scientists or data enthusiastic researchers. So you have like a team of people who are working on the same code, for example, and who want to add like different features to the code, or maybe do different parts of the analysis. Maybe one person does the descriptive part, another person wants to help with that, and then another person does the complicated analysis, and you all want to work on one file or one project, for example. That's definitely possible using Git and GitHub. Also, when you work together on a data, if you want to work together on a data analysis project. And the goal is to kind of keep track of what the others do, and at the end then merge the individual contributions into one overall project. So that's the end goal, to have like one project, one final project that you all worked on, and that can then be used for all sorts of things. So how do we do that? There are different scenarios. The first scenario is, there are two scenarios actually, so not so many. The first scenario is that you are the owner or a collaborator in a GitHub project. That is kind of the easiest thing. So what that means, I will just show you in my GitHub. So I have different repositories. Actually, I think I also have one where I'm a collaborator. Yeah, so here I'm also a contributor in that project, which means that I have all the rights to push to that repository via my command line. So this is kind of the easiest thing to do, and you can, if you have your own repositories, for example, the example project, and I now want to work with other people on that, you go to settings, and then you go to collaborators, and then you go to add people, and then you can search for people's usernames. So if, for example, you want to work together, yeah, I don't know, I mean, I want to work together with Rishal, so I would just enter Rishal's name, and then he will also be a collaborator in that project, and he can just do what we just did. So he can also do the git add, git commit m, git push, and push to this repository the normal way. So this is kind of the easiest way to collaborate. But it's also sometimes rare, because some people maybe have projects and you want to contribute to that, and of course they won't add you as contributors. Maybe there's a very huge R project you want to contribute to, you won't really get easily contributor rights. But this is one scenario. If you're in a small team, then this definitely works. So what you would do then is you go to GitHub and you go to the repository that you and your team work on. So right now, I would just work with myself. So I just say I'm the only contributor here. So I could just do that for myself, kind of. And I would go to the repository, and in the terminal, I would type, first I would go to code, copy paste this code here, copy this code here, go to my terminal, go to the folder where I want to have that stuff. So I would just make a new directory. Enter that. Whoops, no. So go in the copy directory. It's currently empty. And what I would do now is type git clone and then just add the URL that you find over here. And what this does is it just kind of copies all the stuff that is in this remote repository into my folder. So it opens a new folder, and then in that one, or it creates this new example project folder, which is the name of the repository, and then in that one you have the different files that you also find here. It's kind of the same as doing the download. But now you can just navigate to the folder where you want to have the stuff and just clone it into that directly without downloading it first to a download folder and so on. So it's kind of also a bit easier to do it that way. All right, so we did that part. Next thing you would do is to always make sure that you're up to date with what has changed in the remote repository. For example, imagine that I've cloned this now, and now, I don't know, Monique is also working on it, and we are in a team, so she's a contributor here. And she now adds something to R and to the analysis, and we merged all the different changes, and So now I'm kind of behind, right? So now what I have here is not on anymore what is here, because someone else has also contributed to that. And you always want to make sure that you're up to date with what has changed in the meantime. And you would do that by typing git pull and then origin of the branch that you're all working on. So it's usually the master branch. So you would just type git pull origin master. And then it tells me, okay, I'm up to date. So I'm up to date with whatever has changed in the meantime. So that's really important for collaborating. It's a really important step to always pull first. And that's also this weird pull command that you're using. So pulling is kind of taking it from the repository. Pushing is pushing it, adding it to the repository. Next thing you do, and now it's not really complex, but this is the part to pay a little bit attention, because branching is really its own topic. So working with branches means that you're kind of working with the copy of everything that you have here to prevent messing up with the master branch. So imagine the master branch is always your final product. The master branch is always what you want to have at the end. It's your final thing, it's your final analysis folder, it's your final output. And sometimes you just want to add, you would just want to play around with code. So maybe you have like an idea, oh, actually there's a nice R function I just wrote. Ooh, but I'm not really sure whether it's actually working or it's a great idea, but I want to show the others. So I want to show what I did, but I don't want to mess with whatever is in the master branch, because this is currently our state of art. It's currently what looks really nice. And we want to avoid messing with the master branch. We want to avoid messing with the final product. So what you do is you do get checkout -b, which means that you're creating a new branch. So master is nothing but a branch, and you can create multiple branches in your one repository. You just have to give the branch a name. So let's give it the name cool feature, because you're actually working on a nice feature now. And it means that you're creating that new branch, and you're also going to that branch now. So now you're no longer on the master branch, but you're moving to the cool feature branch, which means that whatever I do now, I add to the cool feature branch and no longer to the master branch. So this is also by typing git branch, you can see what branches you have in there, and you see there's a master branch, but there's also cool feature branch, and this green stuff here tells you that you're currently on the cool feature branch. So if you don't have this git colon whatever, you can just type git branch, and then you see the branches and also the one you are on right now. If you want to go back to the master branch, I would do git checkout master. And now I'm back on the master branch. But we want to avoid that. So we want to go to the git checkout cool feature branch to now work on something that is a little bit tricky to do, maybe something I don't want to push to the final product right away, but just play around with a bit. So that's what we use branching for. Now I could make some changes.
Can I add something?
Definitely, yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe it's a weird question, but what are branches? I thought these were folders, but what?
Yeah, it's not a folder. So branches is kind of, a branch is creating a copy of the entire folder. So it's like, it's not really, that copy isn't there locally, but you can think of it as a copy of the folder. So whatever you do in a new branch doesn't affect the master branch. So if I change, it's a bit weird to understand, but if I change something, so I still have all my stuff in here, but if I now go into the R folder and change something there, and I go on my GitHub project, this won't affect anything here, because this is the master branch. This is what I see on the master branch. So this, whatever I add here and do here, it won't affect what I see in my final product. And that is what we want, because sometimes this is, for example, a website. Imagine it's a website, or it's like an output you want to show to a collaborator, and you're just trying out stuff, you're just messing around with things, and you want to show the others. You want to work on something, you want to show the others, but you don't want to mess around with the final product. So what you do is using a branch and then adding your changes to the branch, pushing it to the branch, and then it won't mess with the master branch, but you actually will see here another drop up, and you can change to that other branch and check out the new feature. And then,
okay, and once you're certain about the changes, you can merge it with the master branch.
Exactly, that's the idea, yeah.
Okay.
And that's the great thing, because that's not really usually possible. I mean, that's only possible using Git and GitHub to really try out different things on different branches, getting that idea of branching, and then merging once you're confident this is actually something you want to add to your final product. I think it's a really great thing. So it's really powerful once you are able to use branching and get the hang of it. Annabella, also had a question?
Yes. One potential usage could be that you create a branch for each of the collaborators, so you know who is doing what, so you have their version of the project, or what?
Nice, exactly. Yeah, that's okay. That's one very common use case.
Okay, thanks.
Tasya?
Yes, I was wondering if you could also change the master branch to one of the tryout branches that you like, instead of merging, make a side branch the new master branch.
Yeah, so you can, in the merge itself, you can kind of control which branch is the basis branch, but usually you wouldn't do that. I mean, usually you would always keep the master branch as the basis branch. And it's also, I mean, even if you work a lot on the other branch and it's now much more complete than the master branch, you can always merge, and then the master branch becomes as complete as the other one. So it's, yeah, you can even have an empty master branch and just work on other branches, and then merge in the end, and you still have a complete product.
And then the second question to that, because I remember I created a master branch once, but I was really not familiar with the whole system. And then the colleague I was working with kind of was like, no, you, well, so I think if I remember right, there is a different type of branch now, so you don't have to call it master branch.
Yeah, there's like a main branch, maybe you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the whole, like, that's why I'm asking, because then he was like, no, we have to change the master branch instead to the main branch, and I never managed that.
Okay. Actually, changing that to the main branch, you would just, so once you're creating a new project, let's just quickly do that, just to show. New one. I won't, no, I will actually create it. So you can also delete repositories. Sometimes I do that because I have so many just for demonstration purposes. So to kind of change the main branch to the master branch and master branch to the main branch, you would do something like that. That means that now this M branch, which is kind of the major branch, becomes the main branch and is no longer the master branch. Let's just do that real quick with an example. Example folder 100. Sorry, I forgot to git add. Actually, there is something to promote. There is no readme. Okay, now that worked. So I add the readme. I commit it. And now what I do is changing from the master branch to the main branch. So now you see I'm on the main branch. So that's all. So you can change from the master to the main branch, and then you can still add the origin and stuff. And now you would of course push to the main branch.
Okay.
So it's just following along those steps. Actually, I'm not 100% sure why you would use main and master branches. I think there are many reasons for that, but I just don't really know. So I usually work with
my colleague told me that there was this whole discussion on, I don't know, Twitter, or I guess it was Twitter, because that's always where these kind of things happen. That the master branch like is kind of weird because the name master can be linked to slaver. Like it's I think it's a personal choice to be more sensitive about the name.
Get it. All right. So it's about the name master. Well, okay. I mean, yeah. Okay. Of course, you can change the name of the master branch. Yeah.
And then, it's good to see that, like, you don't necessarily have to, and like maybe it's a personal choice then.
No. Actually, you can just follow along exactly this, and then you're just on the main branch and not the master branch.
Okay.
But I'm just so used to doing the git push origin master. I always type that. It's just in my head. So if I use these commands and change it to main, I will always mess this up. So I avoid that by just never using the main branch, but always using the master branch. So
then with the main, it would then be push origin main.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, but that is, I would just ignore this repository for now. Actually, I don't know what happens if I just don't do anything there. And get back to our, where was it? Example, project copy. Okay, so now we're back to that. So we're still on the cool feature branch. Now we could, for example, make some changes on that branch. Let's see. Let's go to the R folder. And let's just, I don't know, I would just open it with code now. You can, of course, also open it in RStudio, and I would also do that if I was you, because this is better. It's just more convenient to work in RStudio with R code. But of course, you can also work on R code in other editors. I mean, now I'm working on R code in Visual Studio Code. I would just search for a nice custom function in R that I want to add. Let's take this one. It's a really simple function, but I think it's a pretty great addition to the project, but I'm actually not sure where that works. I don't want to mess with the master branch, so I'm adding it here. I'm still my cool feature branch. I opened that thing here, saved it, close it. So I made a change to something while being on the cool feature branch. What I would do now is like the usual workflow. So I would git add. So I did something, I want to git added, git committed, added subby function. Okay, so far so good. We all know that already. Oh, now again I'm on. I'm still in the wrong folder. So I have to go back to the example project folder. So I just do it again. All right. So, but now you have to be aware that right now we're not pushing to the master branch because we don't want to. We want to push to the cool feature branch because we don't want to mess with the master branch. So what we do is git push origin cool feature. We are on the cool feature branch, so we can also push to that. We can only push to the branch we are on. So if this was master, we cannot push to the cool feature branch. But we are on the cool feature branch, we push to it. So far, so good. Okay, let's get back to the... Actually, that was in the example project. So you have to navigate on GitHub to your repositories, go to your example project. And what we see now here is there is a recent push from the cool feature branch. All right, so it's pretty evident what we do next. We compare and write a pull request. So it already tells me that it's able to merge. So there are no conflicts with other pushes to that branch, which is quite, I mean, it's very seldom that there is a conflict if you're using branching because nobody else will use the cool feature branch, right? I mean, yeah, it usually works okay with the branching unless someone else is working on the same subby function or whatever, so it's not able to merge. But that's, yeah, branching is kind of to avoid merge conflicts, so this usually works. So now you would also add like a comment what you did there, but since it's a very small thing, I would just create a pull request right away. So what I'm doing here is kind of checking whether this cool feature is actually something sensible. So it's actually something that I also like. So I can go to the branch and check it out. Or just click on this and see what has been added. So if I was, for example, the owner of that product, of that project, and I would be the one who would be responsible for merging that into our main master thing, so into our main product, I would check this out and see and look at that function and check out whether it actually makes sense. And now I see subby. Okay, I would try it maybe out or do some tests or whatever, and then confirm that this is actually a really great addition to the master branch. So it's a really great addition to our overall project. And once I'm satisfied with everything and I think, okay, this person did a good job, and I can actually include that change into the main product, I would confirm the merge. And then this is merged into the master branch. So now, and then also after you've done that, you can actually delete the branch. So if it's only like adding a small subby function, you can just delete the branch because you don't need it anymore. And then if you go back to your example project, and go into the R folder and go into the custom functions, you see the little subby thing down here. So you see it's now in the main master, on the main master branch. And also you just have one branch because you deleted this other unnecessary branch. You don't need it anymore. This has been merged to the master branch. You're satisfied with the overall thing. Great. So this is a nice contribution to your product, and it actually worked quite well. And that is that already. So you could now, since this branch is deleted on GitHub, you could also delete it here, but you don't have to. You can also just, I think it's actually recommended to delete it, but you can also just check out back to the master branch, and that's fine. So now you're back on the master branch. If you need the branch again, yeah, you would just use it again. So you would just go back to the branch, add something, do something there, and then push it again. Then you would have the new branch again here, and so on. So you could do stuff, change more stuff. So yeah, on GitHub, you create a pull request. Other people will then check that out, start maybe a conversation if they don't like it. And once everything is resolved, it would be merged back into the master branch. That is the very easy workflow, and it usually works okay because you would, yeah, push maybe something that really makes sense, and then someone else could merge it. But usually, of course, you work longer on your branches. It can be a small thing like a subby function, but it can also take a few days working on another branch and then pushing that, and then maybe also the merge takes a bit longer because people actually check out what you did. So you really maybe also want to discuss some changes so people can review your pushes on this other branch. If there are small things that you forgot to add, so maybe there's a comment. So you saw also that comment function when you merge. You forgot to read in the data or something. You forgot something small in the function. I don't know. You would add that comment as the owner of the repository, or actually you can also assign. You can actually assign also reviewers for the change, and then they would maybe comment on that a little bit. And then you can go back to your. So if the branch still exists, so it hasn't been merged, it hasn't been deleted, then you could just make the small changes, add some features, still use that old cool feature branch, and then do the git add, git commit, git push origin, and then still the feature branch. So the cool feature branch. That is for small changes, so it's just the usual workflow. If for example, it has already been merged and the branch has been deleted, or if you add something that is not related to that cool feature anymore, but something totally different, then you would again check out through the master branch. We already did that. So we already checked out to the master branch. So we're back on the master branch. And then this is important because maybe after a week or so, someone else has contributed to your project. And then what you want to do is always pull the stuff. And you see now, actually you always have to do that because you changed something. So you added that cool function. So there is already a change that you have to pull. You have to pull it to the master branch, otherwise it's not there. So you always have to, if you go back to the master branch and this has been merged to the master branch on GitHub, you have to pull it to also have it on your local machine. Is there a question? No, all right. Then you would, for example, check out to a new branch because you actually want to add another feature. Make the necessary changes, and then it's the usual workflow. So you would then push again to the new branch, of course. And then it's again reviewing that, merging it to the master branch, and so on. So it's not that tricky, I think. So it's just about like getting that workflow with the branches, remembering to push to the branch, then someone has to merge that stuff. It can also remain unmerged. It's fine, maybe a merge takes long, maybe a person wants to take a bit longer to review that, no problem. You can still add stuff to that branch. Even if it's not merged or anything, you can still work on it, stay on it, push stuff, and then it will be added to the merge, like to what will be merged at the end. Or create a new branch if you're working on a new feature. But you can also remain on your branch, no problem. And once it has been merged and deleted, yeah, you always have to create a kind of a new message what you add if some time has passed, and always pull before. Is that clear? Yeah, sounds like it. All right, again, it's practice, and at some point it becomes really natural, this workflow. Now the other scenario, and I think that is actually once you are more of an advanced R user, or you're working on open science projects, or you want to contribute more to open science, to open science, or also to open source software or to projects, then actually this scenario might be more common. So what you would do if you want to contribute to another person's project, I've actually created this other repository here. So this is my other GitHub account, just for demonstration purposes. And what you would do here is you would fork the repository. Maybe you've heard about this forking a repository before. It's actually not that big of a deal. You would click fork, select your owner, give it a name. I think I already have 2 in there, so I just call it test repo 3. I hope you don't get confused with the different numbers, but okay, let's call it test repo 3, creating the fork. And what this means is that I'm kind of copying this other person's repository to my own GitHub account. So now I have this in my own GitHub account. Of course, this is not really interesting. I mean, this is a very uninteresting repository, but there are so cool things people do online and on GitHub. So forking those repositories definitely makes sense. And forking a repository also means that you're not messing with that person's repository. Or I think actually that's not possible because you won't be able to push to another person's repository. But it means that you can just use this as your own repository. So you have all the access rights to this one here. So you can do whatever you want on this repository. It's your own now. So you just forked it, so it's on your own GitHub account. So we forked it. What you would do now is clone the new repository. So you go to your forked repository and do the same workflow as we did before. So we would copy this. Okay, git clone, and then clone that into your test repo 3. Okay, now you would make some changes here. Yeah, you have to go into the folder, of course. For example, here now I'm on the main folder. So I somehow created that on the main branch. So now this is just something to remember or to notice. If you're not sure on which branch you are and you don't have this git colon, again, you can just type git branch and it will show you the branch you're on. So there is a thing that's called new feature. Let's just add another README just for making this a bit. So you're now changing something in that repository, in that local repository you're having now on your local machine. You're adding actually README 2. An empty README 2. Of course, usually if you want to contribute to an open source project, you would do something fancier, not add an empty README. What you do now is you add the change, git commit minus edit useless README 2, and then you push to your now it's the main branch. And then on GitHub, you would go back to the original repository and create a pull request. And here you can now, actually, I think, yeah, here you can now see like the branches and also the repositories that you want to work with. So the base repository is always the original one. So that's the alter ego test repo, and the base branch is the main branch. And you added your changes on the alter ego test, not on the alter ego test repo, but on the NEOKK. test repo, and on the main branch. So this is this is kind of the copy that you had over. So this was kind of the fork that you created from this one, from the alter ego. You added some changes to that. You pushed it. Here I pushed it to my forked repository, to the cloned repository, to the first forked and then cloned repository. And now I want to merge those changes or ask the person, like the owner of that original one, to accept my changes. And I would do that by clicking create pull request. I can already see that I added the readme too. So I create a pull request. I would always add some comments here, and a title, create the pull request. All right. And that is already it for your side. So you can't really do anything else now as the person who contributed. But now we go to the other side. Let me just quickly do that. So this is how it would look like for you. So you're now done. You've done your changes. You've done everything you can. And now it's really up to the... Sorry, I have to quickly... GitHub. All right, so now I logged into the alter ego. So of course that would be like the owner of the repository. So for example, if it's a very big open science project, I would be now like the owner of that open science project. I would go to my repositories. And I would already see there's a pull request over here. I would click that. And one second, now I was a bit lost. So actually, I think I just have to, I would just open that. And then of course some stuff, so I would check it out. I would of course check out the changes, check out the README, see whether that makes sense, maybe add a comment, maybe assign someone to actually check it again, assign a reviewer, so I can do all kinds of things. If I'm satisfied with the README too, and I really like that as an addition of my open science project, I can merge the pull request. So I would just confirm the merge and merge that into my main branch. So if I now go back to the test repo, I see the README too here. I think that was really a lot of info, and actually it's quite cool. I mean, this is really the only way to contribute to open source projects, to do that via GitHub and to create those pull requests and to make the other person accept that and merge that into the main product. So yeah, if you ever consider doing that, it's actually not that hard. I mean, I just showed you like really quick and dirty how to do it. But of course, it's quite cool if you find some, I don't know, like a nice repository online and there are still some things to do and you actually really want to contribute to that, this would be how you would do that. Do you have a question about the workflow? Do you think you could do that now, like create a pull request?
With your sheets? Yeah, probably.
Cool. It's not that hard, right? I mean, it's a bit scary sometimes because they're like so big open source projects sometimes, and you really, I mean, I think it's kind of nice to contribute to that or also have other people contribute to your stuff. So that's the whole idea about about this open source software and also tools. So yeah.
And it's a lot of steps. I would be a bit scared if I forget one step that I end up in a wrong folder and maybe screw something up. But that's probably what the branches are for.
Yeah, the branches definitely help with that. And also usually, like, for if you contribute to an open source project, the first time people are also very willing to help. Like if you have questions or something, or you don't write a perfect commit or something, or you don't really comment your changes very well. I think that's totally fine. That happens. But yeah, sometimes I really feel people are I'm also myself sometimes always really hesitant actually contributing to other people's projects. And it can be a lot of fun. And I mean, sometimes you also need help from other people. So to be able to work with these merges and pull requests is really useful, I think, if you're using GitHub. So I just wanted to show you how that goes. And I think, yeah, now you're all set to contribute to open science projects. I always write open science, I mean open source, but I mean, sometimes it's the same, so it's related at least. And now I would actually like you to try that out. So I mean, for those people who had issues with the SSH keys or other stuff, we could also take the time to work on that a bit and figure those things out first, of course. But if it worked for you, like doing the add and the commit and push in the first part, then I think this is now the next step. So now you really want to work together on a project. And since you're working in pairs, you can also add a contributor to your project, for example. So if you feel comfortable with that, you can also go to your project, go into the settings, and if the other person that you're working with in your little team also has a GitHub account by now, which he or she should, then you can add that person's name here as a contributor to your project. And maybe, I don't know, who knows, maybe there's some projects developing out of this. So yeah, maybe try it out. If you're not really comfortable with adding another person, just try to do that with yourself. So the first part that I showed, the first scenario then applies to you. So you can just follow along with the first scenario and check out to a different branch and try out those things just for your own repository without adding another person and without creating a pull request for the other person's repository. It's really up to you, like how far you want to go with that and what you want to try out. But I definitely encourage you to try out the branching and working with your own pull requests, like pull requests you write for yourself, kind of. I think that's always the first step. And then if you want to also do that, that would be really cool. But that's really secondary. So you with me? Right. It's also nice to see your faces sometimes in between all the slides and the windows and yeah. Okay, so actually before jumping into blogdown and the other cool tools you can use in combination with R, I would just briefly get into how to integrate GitHub with OSF. And that is actually just a very small thing because it's super easy to do. But sometimes, so for some of the projects, or for actually one paper I recently wrote, I needed like an online repository with the DOI for my data and also for parts of the syntax. And it's actually easy to create that with OSF. And now instead of adding all the files you maybe already have on your GitHub, you can just link your GitHub with OSF and then have it all there. So you don't have to do like the manual, dragging it there, dragging it on OSF again. So it's sometimes a lot of work to do. So you can just use the shortcut of adding, connecting GitHub to your OSF, like a GitHub repository to OSF, and then just use the stuff from GitHub for your OSF page. So how you do that, you go to OSF. And then just for the purpose of the workshop, I would just create a new project. And I would go to add-ons and enable GitHub. That's almost it. So you enable GitHub in your add-ons. Then you import an account from a profile. So click on import. I don't know if you usually have to type in your passphrase or something, but maybe it just looks like that also for you. It's definitely pretty easy to do, and then you would just use one of the, like the repository that is actually that you want to share with your, that you, for example, want to send with your paper, and save that. Okay, and I think that is actually it. So now it's all here. And the nice thing about this is that you can also anonymize it. So you can remove the UNOKK stuff. But before that, you can, for example, also, I would just make it public now. And then you can create a DOI for your project and whatnot. And I'm thinking, yeah, if you click anonymize, you see that now it's anonymous contributors. And the person who's now opening that, for example, a reviewer or so, would not see your name. He or she would only see, okay, it's from GitHub or whatever, and then see, see all your stuff that you want to add here. And of course, sometimes it makes sense to create like a separate repository just for your publications, because maybe you don't want to add all the analyses or whatever. Of course, it's better to add everything, but maybe you want to hide certain parts. You can use the git ignore for that, or yeah, if you just want to add data, then you use the repository where only the data sits. So it's pretty easy peasy, I think, to do, and quite useful. So for like publication, sharing data, for people who need a DOI with your project, that's pretty great. And that's it already. Yeah, any questions about this useful integration? So for me, it definitely saves time, because I don't have to add anything anymore on GitHub, on OSF. All right, and then we would now go to the very final part, blogdown. So this is really just an addition. And again, for some people, it's really cool to use blogdown. It's super useful. They really enjoy it. And others, maybe not. So it's definitely more of an addition to R Markdown and to your skill set, but I find it quite cool, and it's actually a really nice way to share your, for example, your science. So if you have really cool results, or if you want to share your, I don't know, want to share some of your projects with the public, then actually creating like a blog for yourself, for your projects is really useful. And you can also, of course, just create a blog for yourself. So to, I don't know, add your CV or whatever. There are all those blogs out there. And sometimes it's nice to have like such a personal thing and have like a blog just for yourself, for your projects, but also for your CV. Maybe something related to your, like what you like, your skill set, whatever. So having like a personal blog, I think it's a cool thing. It's a cool outlet for what you can actually do, and it's cool to share that with people who are interested in your projects, for example. So that's why today I will show you a little bit how to use Blogdown. Again, this will only be like an overview of what is possible. I've also not used Blogdown for a very long while now, but I just wanted to share with you some of the cool, like some of the tools that you can use in combination with R, just to give you like an overview of what is possible, what is out there. And if you really like that, then maybe revisit the slides or go online and just search for Blogdown and get into that in more detail. So we won't do like a detailed Blogdown workshop today. It's just beyond the scope of the workshop. But I just wanted to show you like how this usually goes and what is possible with R and R Markdown. So what is Blogdown first? Blogdown is some sort of a static site generator. So for example, this site I shared with you, the annekatrin-kleine.com thing, that I created via Blogdown. And Blogdown is just taking like HTML, CSS, or JavaScript elements that you don't necessarily have to change yourselves. So there's a lot of like default setups that are added for you, like style setups that are added by using a certain theme. And Blogdown uses those elements and then elements you add, for example, pictures, but also of course code and code outputs, and merges that all together to then create like a blog. So it uses the power of Hugo, which is a static site generator, to kind of create blogs using like those static elements that you add to the blog, and the power of Hugo. And then you can have like your own personal blogs. And I think it's great because it's really customizable, so you can really do like any sort of blog, you can use any sort of theme. It's really like a variety of things, a variety of blogs you can create. And the great thing about this is that, of course, you can add your code, you can add like code snippets, outcomes, whatever. And this is usually not supported by other site generators like WordPress, Tumblr, and so on. So this is a very cool thing about Blogdown. It's very easy to keep track of what you do. It's easy to publish your projects via Blogdown. If there's anything related to R or statistical computing, graphics, then Blogdown is much, much better than using any of that. If it's really only about, I don't know, writing about your last holiday or whatever, then maybe you don't have to use Blogdown. So this is really for your kind of professional outlet in a way. So if you just want to write about pictures or whatever, then maybe WordPress or some other thing is better for you. But if you want to write something about R or analyses, this is definitely the thing to go for. So in the end, the site can, for example, look like this. So you build a site for your data science project. So you can have like different, as I said, different templates and themes that you can use. And then at the end, you can serve a site which then looks like that or similar or totally different. So a very easy and fast setup is, and we will actually do that live. So I will now create a new blog. And you do that by just creating a new project. Going to new project. In a new directory. You're choosing website using Blogdown. You give it a name. Yeah, I just create even a new folder, like it's then very nested, but anyway. Okay. And here you can choose your theme, and that is very important to kind of choose a theme that you like, because you will usually stay with that theme more or less. You can also switch themes, but usually you then stay with that theme for a while. And we will talk about themes and all the possible themes that you could choose in an instance. But this is kind of how it goes, and then you would just create the project. And you already see that all this was generated in R. And what you can do now, just to try it out, is to use the add-ins and then the serve side. And actually what will show up is your website. Of course, this is not really in a very advanced and nice layout, but this is kind of a very easy and fast way to add your stuff to a website. So now you already have a local website within a few seconds, minutes maybe. Then you would of course make a repository on GitHub for your project and connect that. I think we can go over that part right now. I will see whether I need to do that actually. But right now, let's just go to the next one. So we have already served the site. And we can now just look into the directory structure. You see over here, or also here in a different format. So you have like different files. They look a little bit similar to the files of the project that we created, right? So you have like a R folder, a little bit similar, not really that similar, but you have like certain folders and files that are always there in every blogdown project. You have an index.rmd. That is just telling R to build the site via blogdown, by using blogdown. And you never ever touch that. So you never do anything about the index. You never change anything here. Just leave it as it is. It will always stay the same. You don't do anything about that. Then you have the public, which you can also ignore. So this is kind of where the output of what is created by blogdown goes to. You also don't do anything about the public folder usually. So you can also just ignore that folder. As I said, you don't knit. So you don't hit a knit button here. Actually, you can't even. But you serve the site. So you use the add-in and serve the site. That is important. So for blogdown, everything related to blogdown is in this section here, and you would serve a site. And then about the other stuff we will talk now. And if that was successful, you see a site like that appearing in your browser. Yeah, and that is already that. Of course, there's much more to it, but before we go into changing that site, actually, I just quickly show you, because what happens now if I serve the site is that this stays local on my machine. So you see here, it's opening a local host. So it's opening something on my laptop, kind of. So this is not online. So if I share that link with you, you cannot open it because it's still on my local machine. So if you actually want to make others see that site, you would need some sort of a hosting provider, like a website hosting provider or something. So you could, for example, use GitHub Pages. That has worked well for me also in the past, but I think something that's very nice to use is Netlify. It's very easy to create an account there. It's all for free. So you would just go to Netlify, log in, connect it to GitHub. That is very important. Or actually, you can log in with whatever, but you always need to connect it to GitHub at some point. Then you go to your sites. And then you go, okay, and at that point, so now it actually becomes relevant if I have a GitHub account that is linked to that site or not. And now I don't have it, which is actually quite useless then to use Netlify. There's also another way of using it, but it makes much more sense to have a GitHub account, to have a GitHub repository linked to your project, because I will show you what that means. So I would now actually create a new repository, website test, make it public, make me the owner, and create that. Okay, then the usual workflow. Okay, so I have my website here, so I would git init, git add, and now I just add everything. Git commit -m add Hugo Lithium web lockdown. Git remote add. And git version. All right. So now I have my website in the remote repository. Now I can import an existing project. Then you would need to configure the Netlify app on GitHub. So you just always have to click that somehow. Go to your account, select the repository, save. So you would need to add the repository that you actually want to create the website from. You're on the master branch, which is fine. So you're loading that from the master branch. You could also load the website from another branch, but for now it's all on the master branch, so that is okay. Base directory just stays the same. The build command is Hugo, since we're using Hugo for our static site generator, and you're publishing that on public. So now it's deploying the site. And that's it. So now it's online. Yeah, again, this looks awful and it's not really informative. But this is kind of how you would do it in a way. So after you've chosen your theme and added some content, you can add it to GitHub, and then GitHub automatically is connected to Netlify. And the cool thing about this is that you've connected is that, for example, if I now want to change something in this here, so I just make a new post. I just explain how to make posts and what that means also in an instance, but let's just try it out. This is a test post. Just use the default, not add any tests. Markdown and done. Just show me some text. And you save the change. It's rendered. Then now if you do the usual workflow with Git, I just clear this, Git add, Git commit, added my first sentence. Then what happens is this is pushed to GitHub, and since your Netlify website is linked to GitHub, these changes will appear on your website. It usually takes like 5 minutes until it's appearing, and usually you wouldn't do it like that, of course. You would make some more changes, maybe tweak the theme, do whatever. So you wouldn't have to do this git add, git commit, whatever, so many times. I just do that for demonstration purposes. And I just want to do that to show you how cool it is and how little effort it is to actually make your changes on the website, because you're just doing it all through the usual Git workflow. So I hope that actually worked. I never worked with this. Yeah, so this is a test post. So you're seeing this is online, and I already have my post there. So it's really cool if you just want to add like some of your code really fast to your website. You can just do that within a few minutes and it appears on your website. So Netlify is really useful for that, and it allows you to host like many different sites, and yeah, so there's not really many limits to that. So we did all that. Okay, let's talk a bit about the themes, because as I said, this doesn't look fancy, right? I mean, the site is like a little bit boring. It looks a little bit shitty, so I could maybe create a better website with a better theme. Right now we have, so the themes are always hosted in the themes folder. So if we open that, we see the Hugo Lithium theme that we've used. And this is always kind of the same build up. So you have like a git ignore, archetypes, an example site, which is actually what you see here. No, it doesn't work anymore because I would need to reconnect. But yeah, so the initial site is always the example site. You have a static folder, which hosts like static content. Static content is something like pictures and all that stuff, and then you can refer to that in your posts. But it's usually the same build up. And then if you want to have like another theme, what you would do is you go to the theme overview. So you have a bunch of different Hugo themes or other themes. Yeah, Hugo, you have to use Hugo. So. And then you can just search for a theme that you really find very fancy and like. So it's really there, almost no limits. There are some themes that are more easy to integrate with Blogdown than others. And there's actually a quite nice post on that in the Blogdown manual. So there's like, if you Google Blogdown, you find that book. It's called Blogdown. And there's a section that's called themes, and there you find like the themes that are easy to integrate, and most of them are. So you can use almost any theme that you want to use and integrate that with your Hugo. So let's just pick one that looks a bit nicer. Why not go, actually I kind of like this one. So what you would do is download the theme, and that would lead you to this page over here. And then what you do is you create a new site with a new theme. Let's just do that. Let's make this small. Actually, I don't know what happens if I just do that within the website itself. And now we don't want to have the Anatoly, but we want to have the, where is it? No. Here. We want to have the Kai, Jimmy, Hugo, theme, stack. All right. Yeah, let's just just wondering. Yeah, I would actually just go to another folder and open it from there. Or yeah, but anyway, let's just try. Yeah, okay, that didn't work. Okay, why not go the... So this is, I think, the very safe way. So you would just create a new project if you want to have another theme, and then go to using no, and then just add it here. So, oh. Maybe not the best way to do that. Okay, and then let's go to another directory. Yeah, let's use that one. Yeah, cool. So that's a new page. Actually, also doesn't look that great, but you get the hang of it, I guess. And I actually think that, for example, the picture that appeared here was in the example site folder. So you would need to put that in the correct folders, and then you can also add pictures and stuff. So really getting into Blogdown again takes a bit. I just wanted to show you that it is possible, and I think it's actually a lot of fun because you can really also work a little bit with the looks of your page. You can also do a little bit of the front end part. So not only the coding, but you would also need to think a little bit about how you want to present your results, how you want to present your analyses and stuff, or how you want to create that blog. So it's not only about the hard coding part, but also about the looks of your site, and you can really customize that to everything. So it's really, yeah, like every part here is customizable. And if you know a little bit of HTML and CSS, great. But if you don't, you actually find a lot of help on that online, and you also don't really need it. So you can also go with the default themes and then add your site to the respective, add your changes to the folders, publish your content, and then just upload it somewhere. So I think it's quite easy to use if you don't want to use it in a very elaborate way. It's actually pretty easy to just get the hang of it quite quickly. Just a little bit about all these obscure folders here. So you have the archetype, so you always have the theme folder, and then the theme kind of controls how the website looks. And then you have different folders here. So you have archetypes, which is actually what you can add as a new post. So you have the add-in. You can have the new post, and then the archetypes is something you can select here. And here you see you have categories, default, and tags. So for this new site, for the Hugo Lithium, there was only the default, but here you actually also have the option to add some other content. And I assume, so this would, for example, look then differently on your site. So maybe categories is something like this, and then maybe a blog post appears here. So you need to play around with that a little bit and see what archetype does what. But that is kind of the content you can add is controlled by the archetype. So the looks of the content you can add is controlled by the archetype stuff. Again, this is really just to give you an overview. It's a lot to get into. I totally get that, but it's just to show you what is possible, and maybe you like it and want to use it later on. Then you have the layouts, and that's actually controlling the looks of so not of certain contents that you add, but the looks of the site itself. You have shortcodes that are, for example, controlling how videos look, or YouTube embeddings. And then you have partials that are just controlling a certain part, like a sidebar, footer, a head, and so on. And you can tweak that. And it's usually HTML, like usually this, did just look into one. Yeah, it's usually HTML. Looks a bit weird and scary if you don't know it, but yeah, possible to get into. Yeah, adding new content, we already tried that and did it successfully, so that's pretty straightforward. So you can also just use that. I mean, if you're okay with the theme, so if you're more or less okay with the site as it looks right here, you just want to add a picture maybe, that's easy to do. You just want to add like a few blocks and maybe some code, that's totally doable without any HTML, CSS. So you can actually just use the, you can just use the default add-in. So just use the add-in, new post, and then post your stuff there, and then it will appear on your website. So that is definitely easy to do. If you want to have a landing page, you would add an index MD to the content folder. It's actually not that important, but I found it quite nice because I didn't know that this is possible. So the first page you land on can look different than the rest. Just by adding an index.md to the content folder, and the content folder is it's not in the themes, but in the here. Quite nice. And you can have also global options. They are controlled by the .r profile, and they're always controlled by the .r profile. Also for other Markdown, R Markdown or R files actually. So the R profile is always controlling like some general settings. And for this one here, it also has its own R profile. So if you go in there, you can see like certain default settings, and sometimes it's useful to add some. For example, this one here, this chunk here, I could just add it down there. And that is setting the blog author name always to Anna. And then you're always creating, by default, you're creating an RMD. By default, you're creating a blog, like in the blog subdirectory. This preserves, yeah, it's not really that relevant now, but it preserves empty fields in the YAML header. So if the YAML header is not completely filled, the fields that are possible are still preserved. So it's quite useful. You can create bundles. We won't talk about that, but you can save that, for example. And now, I don't know if it takes effect after I reload R or if it does it right away. Yeah, no, it doesn't. So I think I have to close it and then open it again. Yeah. So what will happen is that once you do that, you just see here, instead of Anne-Kathrin Kleine, you see Anne, because I now changed the default to blog author name to Anne. I think you get the idea. Yeah, and the general workflow is you would open your website project as we just did. So we created one, opened that. Then you surf your site just to see whether it actually works. Then you can add new posts and do whatever you want, write and save. And then push the changes to GitHub. And then it automatically uploads that to Netlify if it's connected. And then, yeah, you have your stuff on Netlify on the web page, and it's all there. And you can showcase your work via your blog. There are a bunch of resources. I already talked about them. So the Blogdown book definitely is the major one, I think. But there are also others that are really useful. Also the slides from the RStudio conference, the Blogdown Workshop. Yeah, so it's really many resources you find online or in the slides that you can use if you want to get into Blogdown. So yeah, do you have, maybe you have many questions about it, but do you have any questions about the general workflow or the idea of Blogdown? Was it more or less clear? Do you find it understandable and easy to grasp? Would you use it yourself? Do you think it's useful?
Yeah, super cool. Mm-hmm.
Okay, from super cool to silence, I just take that as it varies. But yeah, so my idea was just for you to maybe just try it out if you want to. So maybe you have a cool project you actually already want to add to a web page. You can definitely do that. There's also a setting that prevents the web page from going public right away. So you can also Google that if you want to prevent that from being shown on the web right away. So maybe you have some other stuff to add there. But maybe you just want to play around with that a bit. You also don't have to share the link or anything if you don't feel comfortable with it. Or you don't have to connect it to Netlify even. So you could just keep it on your local machine and just start creating your own blog if you want to. So this is really for you to try it out. And yeah, create your own Blogdown project. And I think we actually don't have to go to the breakout rooms for that. Or how do you feel? Is someone here who really doesn't want to try that or wants to work on something else or revisit another part of the workshop? Who would like to try it out?
I think what you showed is really cool, but I'm my head's pretty full with the other stuff still, and I'm not sure that I'm gonna manage to also follow this at the end of the day.
Yeah, actually I get it, yeah, totally.
I think for me it's similar.
It's perfectly fine. So how about I just present like the other tools that you can also use with R, and then we just call it a day, because it has been a really, really full day with many things and a lot of information. So yeah, that would also be fine, I think. I just close with that.
Yeah, that would be fine with me. I really like the way we're doing things, but it's just so much information, especially since the programs sometimes don't work initially, and it's a lot of debugging.
Yes.
This is pretty hard stuff to do 2 days in a row, even though we're not doing 4 days. But I really like just sitting back passively and seeing what's possible, and then applying that and looking at it when I have time to do so.
Perfect. Yeah, that works for the others as well. We could just do that. It's totally fine.
Yeah, works for me. Yeah.
I also get it. I mean, I really put like a lot in those 2 days, and I realized that it's a lot of information and input. But I also feel it's maybe sometimes nice to just have like this general overview, know what's possible, and then just pick what you find useful. Maybe there are things you will never use again. Maybe there are things you really like. Maybe we'll start really getting into this version control, or you like to create your own blog. So that really, makes it possible. And I hope that is not too overwhelming. So let's just go with the last other useful R tools. There are many, so I think also I can't really name them all, but there are 3 more tools that I just wanted to mention at least that you can use in combination with R. So for example, Xaringan is a slide creator. So I also created the slides using Xaringan. I think it's a pretty nice, useful tool. And the great thing is, so if I go to, I actually have a workshop folder in my own directories. So if I just quickly open that. Just to show you also kind of the benefits of having it all, or like of the possibilities to combine all these things. So now I have like this is just a website. This is my website folder, kind of. And in here I have a static folder where I host stuff that is not related to the website itself, but it's more like content I add to the website. Content like slides or pictures. And here I have a slide folder, and that's actually all the slides that are that I also push to the website at the end. So I have my own slides here, and if I just go to day 1, this is actually how I created the slides for day 1. And I used like also a little bit templates and stuff, so it's actually not that much work to create them if you're using templates, but this is kind of the slides you saw for day 1, and this is the slides you're seeing today. So we're at the end, so you're seeing the Xaringan slides now. And I think it's useful because I can just refer to those slides on my website itself. So if I go to the website content, and then I have my blogs and the workshop, then I just refer to the slides from the static folder here. So I just have the day 1 compressed PDF here, and I also have the HTML here, and then link that via this link. So you don't really have to have it all over the place, but you can just link your own files and folders and still use the slides. So if I go to day 2 and use the add-in Infinite Moon Reader. So the Infinite Moon Reader is for slides, for Xaringan slides. Then those slides are just created from within my website. Takes a bit, but it's usually always working. Oops. Usually goes quite fast, but the first serve always takes a while. So because it has to reload all the slides, and that sometimes takes a bit. But yeah, so I can then also open that in a new window, change stuff here and see it right away in the other window. So I can work on my slides from within my website and still have the slides embedded on the website, which is quite nice, I think.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take you to write the slides for a day in this way?
Actually, I would say writing them doesn't take long in R, because again, it's just Markdown language, so you just write it down. But I think creating the content itself was work, because you have to think about like what you want to present, when you want to present it. I've never given this workshop before, so it's kind of like developing it, I think, was a lot of work, but it would have been the same work in, I don't know, PowerPoint, or maybe even more, because I can't embed certain stuff, and it's really like a lot of work around in PowerPoint sometimes for me. So actually creating the slides themselves was kind of okay. But I think doing a workshop is a lot of work. So that is just something you don't really get around.
That I get.
Yeah, so that was of course work. But having the slides here, yeah, it's not that difficult, I think. And I also use templates always. Like, I don't know, I have a template, for example, in GitHub, I clone that, and then I just adjust the slides. If I like the layout of the template, I just adjust some stuff. So for example, this black background and the font, I didn't really mess around with that. I just used it from another.
Okay, that's what I was wondering most about, like how long it takes to then adjust the layouts and so on, or to embed certain things or certain images, but with templates, that's of course,
templates are really
helpful.
cool. Yeah, and then I added like some things, for example, making some background blue, or so it's. But it's really, once you know how to create like a pull right and what that means, and you see the output, you can also create your own pull right. You know, I mean, it's really not that difficult to get the syntax at some point, and then you just create the slide. So I would say it's okay, like the amount of work creating those slides is kind of okay once you get into it a bit. Then it goes kind of fast, I'd say. Yeah, it's more like depending on whether the content is very complex or very big. Then of course it takes a while. Okay, yeah, so much about Xarangan. Then you have Bookdown. I won't talk about that a lot. It's just like a way to, you can even create like Kindle books with R Markdown, HTMLs, PDFs, whatever. If you want to write a book, you can also write it in R Markdown. And there's a lot of nice and fancy tools that help you writing like chapters and having that typeset. And yeah, you actually get around using LaTeX, for example. You can just do it all in R Markdown, or writing your thesis. You can also write your thesis in Bookdown. So there are many nice features to Bookdown that make it very easy to write those things. And then finally, there's Shiny Applications, which is, in my opinion, a little bit on a different level and also a little bit trickier in a way, because Shiny apps take more of the layout of a package. So I have it in my, in my Dropbox. So I even have I still use Dropbox sometimes for some stuff. So feedback reports. There it is. So yeah, I'm really not an expert in Shiny apps. I've just created one that is working okay right now, but it's also not finished at all. And that was kind of some work to get into Shiny apps and to understand all that stuff like that it's doing, because suddenly it's interactive. So suddenly you're also allowing users to enter stuff and to do things. And there's a lot more you kind of have to take into considerations. But there's a nice package that's called Golex that makes it a bit easier, because it's kind of creating like this folder structure for you, more or less. Let's just see whether it runs. Actually not. Yeah, so I have created like this should actually not be there. Well, I have created like a very simple, it's not finished yet, but I have created a very simple website for participants of a study. And they can then, once this is finished, go to the study and see some of their results and outputs. And it's a little bit interactive. I haven't added much interactiveness yet, but they can add their participant ID and then see like, I think 1001 is actually showing. So they see, for example, they're younger than 30% of the participants. It's not that fancy yet. And then see like certain some of their outcomes on a map. You can even zoom in. And so this is a little bit more interactive than a static website. So this is not static anymore because you can actually interact with it. And that is kind of what Shiny applications are great for. They're better examples than the one I created, but this is, this is how that goes. It's also, I find it quite a lot of fun also to get into Shiny applications. If you want to create something that people can mess around with and enter their participant codes, for example, and see the outputs or something, this is the best thing you can use. Like Shiny applications is really useful for that. And once you get into it again, it's okay-ish work. It's like okay to do. It's fun to do. And that is actually the final part. So there was quite a rush and quite a lot. But I think now you really have a very good overview of what is possible with R Markdown, and the different R applications. And don't feel frustrated, or I hope you don't feel overwhelmed. It's a lot to get into, but there's so many resources online, and you can also always contact me if you want to. And I'm really happy to help you out with that stuff. So I really just like it, and feel free to reach out whenever you want. And actually my idea also, what I would like to do, like future projects, what would be really cool, I think what this stuff is also very useful for, is to be more open about our science, also in terms of communicating outcomes, right? I mean, we have the journals and stuff, but it would also be nice sometimes to show results in a different way, like using figures, graphs and stuff, and showcase that a little bit more, like show more what those results actually mean. So I find that quite useful, because sometimes people don't understand the stuff you're working on. And I think sometimes for me it's a little bit frustrating just to work with journals and journal articles. So that is kind of why I also like this outlet a bit and the opportunities this offers. But yeah, I also just find as much time as I find for that. And so you really have to like that stuff, otherwise it's not really something I would advise you to get into more. Yeah, Laura.
Maybe this question is now, I don't know, a bit far off, or also a bit banal, I don't know. But I was just wondering, when you said that with the journals, that of course this helps if the process with journals is kind of frustrating, or can take a very long time before you actually get there and put knowledge out there. Do you think that it could be also sometimes kind of risky, because of course then it doesn't really go through a peer review process what you're putting out there, or at least not an expert peer review process, and that maybe sometimes there's also, I don't know, some data or some statements or like some projects out there that maybe wouldn't have necessarily made it through peer review, or not in this shape or form. I don't know if you understand.
Definitely. Actually, I think, I know what you mean, and I think there's definitely something to it regarding the theoretical part of your project. So sometimes maybe you're inventing your own theory, and then you're having nice results and publish that on a website. So I definitely see that point. But I also see, I mean, I myself have also published or submitted papers which were not open data, so I just didn't show my data. I just published it somewhere, and there were reviewers, and they looked at it and they said it's okay, but they have never seen my data. They have never seen my code. They actually don't really know whether it's okay. They just trusted me, and I think in that regard, it's actually also very risky to just go ahead and just, I don't know, believe everything that is in a journal, right? And here, for example, if you're really following these open science and open source principles, then you would also, add your data to a repository, add your syntax to a repository, so people could actually see what you're doing. They could actually see your data. So I think that's much safer sometimes than the stuff we can submit in journals. I mean, in journals, it's really not based on trust as well, right? And this is also, I mean, you have the raw material usually along with your project. So that makes it very easy for other people to go there and check out what you've done.
Yeah, if people then actually do that, I fully agree. In journals, maybe if you're lucky and you have knowledgeable experts, they could tell you, they would check if you, for instance, use proper statistics before something is put out there.
Yeah.
Whereas when you use improper statistics, but you put it on some website or GitHub or so, of course, people who check everything are going to see that, you did something wrong or not appropriate. But yeah, if someone doesn't understand everything that's in there, but just sort of like the outcome, I guess there's also a certain risk to it. But no, I mean, I fully agree. Also, reviewers don't always, or usually don't look at everything. So I definitely see the benefit of this, yeah.
Yeah, but I also see your point, definitely, yeah. So I think it's really a matter of like how transparent are you with that stuff. So if you're very transparent with it and you have like a data science outcome and you push it to a website, you can also say, here's the link to my data. And then it makes it very easy for people to actually see the data and go along and check your results, check your analyses. And of course, also having like a proper folder structure makes it easier for people to follow along. So if they see your script and it's super messy, it's difficult for them to actually follow what you've been doing. But if it's kind of tidy, then it's also easier for them to see, okay, that person has done this step first, and then there are functions in the R folder that I can look at, okay, and this person has done that, and this is the data, this is the raw data, this is the processed data. It becomes so transparent at some point that I really think the disadvantages outweigh the benefits. And if you're actually taking open science seriously, then also other people who are also maybe data scientists would check that and check it out. And then maybe, I don't know, if they're friendly, they would just tell you, hey, I actually saw this thing here. Maybe you want to take a look. Or maybe even raise an issue on GitHub or help you with that stuff on GitHub. So make their own pull requests for your repository, and then you can figure stuff out together. So this is kind of the ideal way how it goes. And I think if you follow that workflow, it's quite nice, and it actually adds a lot of transparency and benefits to your open science practice.
Yeah, that sounds ideal, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even for journals, sometimes it's very nice for them to have like this OSF thing where you also add your data and stuff. So that's also part of it, right? So if you know how to interact with GitHub, then you can just upload that also to OSF, and it makes it much easier, and still have your outputs maybe even on a blog or website. So I think it just adds more opportunities for you. You don't have to use them, but I think you just like the stuff you can use becomes more versatile. But of course, it's always up to the scientist how transparent you are with the stuff and how much you follow open science practice and rules. And this was a very technical workshop. I see that point. I mean, it was really not about ethics or how this works with, I don't know, like open science in general, like the whole idea behind it. I just really presented the techniques you can use to maybe make stuff easier. So that was kind of the idea. I think there could be another entire workshop about the ethics behind open science and also the difficulties you're facing with open science, but it was not the focus of this workshop. So I hope you don't mind. Maybe I could do another workshop on that or just visit one. But this was more the technical part.
No, but I really appreciate it then, I must say, because I think in other scientific research or like ethical, I don't know what's the other, there are some courts on that also in the KLI, like how to do open science and ethical science. Yeah. I actually really appreciated that this was now a really hands-on approach.
Yeah, but I totally agree that the other part is super relevant as well, like knowing what this actually means and what open science means and why it's important. So, yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't want to hold you here any longer. Do you have other questions, comments, remarks?